Hi there, back for more. So we left off with the skills chapter there, and the one that follows is the equipment. Now there's a nice little picture of an adventurous emporium, all sorts of stuff on the walls there. Very nice illustration. Um, so yeah, its coinage is very familiar: copper, silver, gold, electrum, and platinum. There is a note on encumbrance here. Anyone who carries too much is slowed down, but you don't calculate the weight of each and every candle and piece of wax and crowbar, whatever you might be carrying. It's just that you sort of use plain and simple reasoning. Um, there's a list of weapons here. Um, certain weapons used by thieves when they pull off a backstab do a heck of a lot more damage than if you just use them mano a mano, face to face. The blackjack, for example, does 1d3 points of damage, but if you make a backstab with it, or rather a clobbering attack from the shadows, it's 2d6. So, yeah, always subdual damage, but still. There are no reach weapons or weapon qualities like trip and disarm, none of that BS. It's very straightforward and simple. And for example, this is kind of nice that short bow, long bow, crossbow, they all have the same damage dice. It's a d6. Its only difference is the range. And you don't have to worry about how long it takes to reload something. It's reloaded. Don't worry about it. The thing about armor, when you do roll that natural 1 in combat and you fumble, the die you use to roll on that fumbling table depends on what armor you're wearing. If you're unarmored, all you roll is a d4. Nothing really too bad is going to happen to you. But Lord help you if you're wearing, for example, banded mail, half plate, or full plate. That's a d16. You can really screw yourself over there. And what I really like here is that the cost of armor is representative of what these things really used to cost. If you buy full plate, people know that you are wealthy beyond words. Small list of equipment, basic adventurers equipment here, nothing complicated. Iron spikes, hand-sized mirror, flask of oil, rope, you know. There's also mounts and related gear. And that's it. Then we go on to combat. Here it says at the beginning of the chapter, a bloody sword begets a wealthy adventurer. True enough. So, yeah. First off, the time here is a bit different. There is a thing called the round, the combat round, which is 10 seconds. Dungeon exploration outside of combat takes place in turns. Each turn is approximately 10 minutes. And that's it. Movement goes as usual. Initiative, armor class, attack rolls. Just like in 3rd edition, there are certain attack roll modifiers, but they are quite limited. I mean, this is the only table in here that has any kind of modifiers, and that's it. And then we have the fumbling table. Critical hits. There is an issue here, but I'll go into that in a separate video where I go over my house rules. But yeah, all 0 level characters and all wizards use critical table 1, which is the worst. And of course, as we go on, the most powerful critical table with the most horrendous results in it is critical table 5 with level 5 plus warriors and level 6 plus dwarves. For example, one of the results here. Blow severs shield arm. Inflict plus 2d12 damage with this strike. Foe's hopes of two-handed weapon mastery dashed. Yeah, it's pretty gruesome. Then there are rules for mounted combat. Simple, again, straightforward, works fine. And then we have the mighty deeds of arms. Described on how you might use them: blinding attacks, disarming, pushback, trip, throw, precision shot, rallying maneuver to bolster the morale of your henchmen, for example. Defensive maneuvers, giving you an armor class bonus, for example. And you can even create your signature deed, for example, like El Zorro, where he just did the Z, the sign of the fox, on his hated opponents to humiliate them. Yeah, that's an example of a signature deed. Damage and death. Well, here's the thing. A 0 level character that drops to 0 hit points, they die outright. That's it. Show's over. Move along. But a first level character that reaches 0 begins bleeding out. They have 1 round in which they can be healed to prevent death. A 10th level character has 10 rounds of life left in them before they go off. And there is a possibility of recovering the body. They presumed you were dead, but it turns out you're not. But if that happens, then you're pretty mangled. You probably lose some permanent points from strength, agility, or stamina. Yeah. There are certain other combat rules here as well, which is nice enough. Turning Unholy gets its own table where you can, like, outright destroy some of the creatures that are way weaker than you are. And you can use this to Holy Smite in a beam or even a cone with a high enough spell check. There are some words on spell duels, but I didn't really fancy those. And then we go on to one of the bigger chapters here, which is magic. Now, this is where this game really kind of shines, because it makes magic something to be feared, even by those who wield it. Or rather, especially by those who wield it, because they know that with great power comes great fumble. Yeah, it's not safe, first off, and it takes quite a lot of work to improve. And although you can pull some incredibly powerful stuff off, even as a first level elf, wizard, or cleric, it still comes with that sort of understanding that, yeah, but watch out. Now, what you can do is either an elf or a wizard can do spell burn, where they burn off points of strength, agility, or stamina to boost their spell casting. So by making themselves physically weaker, they drain their body of life force. They can fuel their spells, which is pretty cool idea. And those lost points do come back, but pretty slowly. Yeah. And then there's this wonderful idea here of, well, first off, If a wizard or an elf fails a spell check, they lose that spell for the day. It's gone. But if they make the spell check, they don't lose the spell. They can use it again next round. And this is really, really handy. So you just have this repertoire of, I know these spells, and you can use all of those until you fail at one of them or some of them. So, for example, if you have like a magic missile and, well, let's see here, magic missile and magic shield and comprehend languages. You fail comprehend languages, well, now you can't use it until the next day, but you still have magic shield and missile. You fail missile, well, now you only have magic shield left, so tough luck, better rest up. But there's also this thing called mercurial magic. Here, well, first you just roll randomly what starting spells you have, which some might not like, but I think it's excellent. But because your character does not, they make a deal with the supernatural patron, but they can't dictate what that patron will reveal to them. It's not all in your hands, so that's why it fits. But yeah, there's this thing called mercurial magic. For every spell that you know, you roll a d100, and you look up this pretty long chart with loads of negative and positive and just plain weird effects that happen every time you cast that spell. If you roll a d100 and you get a reading of 41 to 60, there is no change. The spell manifests as standard. But if you get 40 or below, or 61 and above, yeah, it might be something weird. For example, hairy magic. The wizard's head hair, beard, eyebrows, ear hair, etc. grows 1 inch each time this spell is cast. Doesn't matter what spell, it's gonna happen. And these sorts of mercurial magics are attached to each spell. So you might get hairy magic with your magic missile, and you might get prismatic distortion with your comprehend languages, where nearby light is distorted and you roll a d6 on how it is distorted. So this is this idea of like, and your friends can be hurt by this stuff. You know, it might be that, yeah, you just, every time you cast a spell, one random metallic object nearby is rusted until useless. That might, if you roll randomly and it happens to be the warrior's greatsword, well, you might have an enemy then. But yeah, there's also the excellent inclusion of corruption. If you fail bad enough, you are corrupted in some way. As it says here, low-level wizards are powerful. High-level wizards fear for their souls. Here's why. There's first-level wizard getting worse and worse and worse until at the end there you can't hardly even recognize what it used to be. So yeah, it might alter your skin, one of your legs might grow into a tentacle, your ears might mutate, whatever. There's different levels of corruption as well. And some of them might even seem useful, but they are horrific. Like you might grow a beak. Yeah, you can use it to sort of attack and bite people, but you're a monster at that point. You can't just walk around town like, no, business as usual. There's the beak man. No. There's also a generic spell misfire, which can be fun. It's not as nowhere near as serious as corruption, but it can still be create a lot of chaos. And then there's the deity disapproval, like I mentioned with the cleric, where, for example, on this disapproval roll, you might get the cleric must undergo the test of humility. For the remainder of the day, he must defer to all others as if they were his superiors. Failure at the discretion of the judge means he immediately loses all spellcasting ability, including healing and laying on hands for the remainder of the day. Yeah, because guess what? The gods are mighty and they don't tolerate weakness and failure, and if your faith wavers, then too bad. Maybe it needs to be stronger, so you're tested. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, but the biggest chapter is magic, because looking over here, the table of spell results, there are loads of pages here, because spells here do not work as normal. For example, this is the spiderweb spell. It starts over here and goes over there. It's the entire spread of this. And why is it such a big description? Because the better you roll at your spell check, the better the result of the spell will be. For example, if the spell check result is 12 or 13, you fail, but the spell is not lost. If you roll a 2 up to 11, you lose the spell and it's a failure, of course. With a natural 1, of course, it's lost, failure, and worse, might get corrupted even. But if you roll a 14 or 15, the caster weaves a spider web up to 10 feet in diameter. It can be placed in any static location, such as a door, frame, or hallway, touched. The web lasts for 1d6 hours before dissolving. So that's the minimum result, successful result. Now let's read at the absolute maximum level. If your spell check is 34 or higher, the caster can fill an enormous space with sticky cobwebs. The space can be up to a mile in diameter, the interior of a castle, the entire span of a battlefield, or the ceiling of a vast cavern. Alternately, the caster can choose to make web space quite small and can restrict it up to 10 human-shaped targets if he wishes, and so on. So you get the idea. And this goes for every spell here. Cleric's spells as well. Same thing. Yeah, very cool thing, and it just means that spellcasting is always more dynamic. One of the major gripes I've always had about D&D is that spellcasting is almost completely static. I mean, there are some small variables with the dice rolls, but like rolling for damage and so on, but really there's no risk to using magic in D&D. None. It doesn't exist. If you cast a spell and you have to concentrate, you roll concentration check and you fail, well, you just lose the spell and that's it. That's kind of meh. And yeah, that was the magic. Then we have quests and journeys, which go over what it is like to quest for the impossible, some ideas, tame a dragon mount, breathe underwater, where you have to locate the Merman King and give him a perfect pearl. Some weird ideas on how to make it work, what kind of stories you could tell. It talks about journeys in a small world, travel in a medieval setting. This is very good. They give all sorts of points here, like, okay, if your campaign world is like medieval, then most people in that world are going to be born, live, and die within a 20-mile radius. They are not going to travel far, because why would they travel? They were born there, they're probably their farm or whatever is there, lived there their whole lives. There's no pleasure travel, basically, until adventure calls you, of course. And yeah, then they come to the chapter on judges' rules. This includes things on how to determine new spells for wizards, and points out that knowledge is scarce and wizards are, and I quote here, jealous bastards. Um, yeah, where a spell might be found from the eldest sphinx, for example. And again, when a wizard or an elf, when they gain a level, I think this might go for clerics as well, actually. No, just wizards and elves. But when they gain basically a new level of spell, or they can choose a new they well, when a new spell becomes available to them, they can either roll randomly for it, or choose if they find it in the world. For example, if they find some old scripture that proves to be a spell, whatever the case may be, they don't automatically get to start use that spell. They have to research it, and that takes a certain price. For example, your firstborn. If you're making a deal with a chaotic entity from another plane, they might demand that as a price for that spell. Uh, yeah. And yeah, there's rules for how to create the familiar as well. And these, of course, go by lawful, neutral, and chaotic alignments again, so there are differences. And some of these are really cool. A miniature minotaur. A spider monkey. A miniature woman of extraordinary beauty. An extraplanar ant. Yeah, okay. And they even get this little table here for familiar personality, where, you know, all sorts of fun. And then we go on to the how to acquire a supernatural patron, what it means, and yeah, they have some things here. What sort of examples of these patrons, and this is, like I mentioned before, Bobak the demon lord of amphibians, and yeah, if you invoke the patron, which you should never do lightly, they might send you some help. In the case of Bobak Bubbles, he might send a fiendish toad to swallow your enemies or whatever. Of course, if you fail in invoking him, you will be corrupted in a very special way, where you might, for example, let's see here. The caster is constantly wet with moisture, as if he were in a sauna or a humid swampland. He sweats constantly. This affects his ability to carry scrolls, paper books, and other such things. So yeah, you become more and more amphibian here. And all of these have their own spell as well. But yeah, that's an example of a not a worshipper of Bobak Bubbles, but someone who made a deal with him. Because I mean, they might, and they do have clerics as well, but this one looks like a wizard starting to resemble a frog. Yeah, let's go over these. And then we come up after the patrons. They talk about what the heroes are, um, and how rare it is to have more than those few levels in any class. A rank uh, commoner, level 0, uh, is 95% of the population of the civilized world. 95%. 2 people in 100 are experts, that's level 1. 1 in 100 is a leader or a master in a craft, that's level 2, and so on. So it goes. And by 10th level, a hero at 10th level, is referred to as an immortal or demigod, no longer mortal. Population incidence for these is 2 or 3 per epoch. They don't even talk about the population anymore. This is a hero of that age, a truly legendary being. But yeah, luck also changes. If you act out against your alignment, you might lose luck. Uh, if you act in accordance to your alignment in a significant way, you will gain luck. And if you take part in the battle between law and chaos and you do something that promotes this battle or takes it a certain way, your luck may change again. Um, yeah, it's really cool. And consequences of having low luck, for example, might be that you just ask, okay, who's got the lowest luck in the party, and that's the guy that gets first attacked in the ambush. Sorry, you don't overdo it, but that's a possibility. Then they talk about magic items here. This is really cool because this is something that I've always been trying to promote in my games, where there is no generic magic item. Doesn't exist. You can't just create stuff like from an assembly line. Um, even potions are rare and created with great risk, because it's a spell to create a magic item. And with spells, you can have misfires. You can even be corrupted. So, yeah. And if you really want to create a powerful magic item, you probably have to use Spellburn to do it, weakening you significantly for a long period of time. But there's also something mentioned here that is pretty cool. Ire of the Gods. See, the gods don't like magic items. Wonder why? Because it takes mortal creatures that much closer to divinity. Uh, so if you have like an amazingly powerful magic item, you might find yourself targeted by supernatural creatures. But yeah, and there's all sorts of different cool abilities, like in 3rd edition, 4th edition, and Pathfinder, for weapons and so on. But these are a bit more extreme in that they are not. Again, this is not a game that is built to be balanced. This is meant to be a game where things might go your way or not, and it's not overly concerned with creation of balance. It's balance through chaos, basically, is what it is. But then we have the monsters chapter with uh, an uh, interesting part here, where they go over that, okay, these are certain tables you can use for variation in humanoids, for example, their appearance, unusual properties and behaviors, what weaponry they use. Physical appearance of the undead, they don't always have to look the same. The good old zombie, where there is sort of provided variety, and they talk about primal servants of chaos and law and elders, those rare creatures that sort of are like agents of law or chaos. And it's said here that monsters don't play by the rules. Why should they? Conan never knew what manner of foul beast he would face or whether his sword would overcome its sorcery. Um, it's not that you cheat against the players, or that you you sort of just make things up on the fly. No, it just means that the monsters are not created like player characters are created. Um, and they have wildly different abilities. They have their unique powers, and I mean, there is a specific crit table here for dragons. They don't use same critical table as the warriors do. I mean, and again, this is very gruesome. Very, for example, critical table for dragons. Result 15. Dragon spears the player character with one of its leg spines, then moves away. The PC flares about trying to free himself from impalement, and so on. Yeah, it's bad. Um, then they talk about treasure there a bit. What type of treasure different monsters might have in their horde, if they even have a horde. And then you have the Cyclopedia of Creatures, Monsters, and Mundane, with example creatures. There we have, well, there and there, I think you can see. Yeah, this sort of ape men and an android there, basilisk, elder brain, whatever, cockatrice, deep one, demon. Yeah, these are very cool, and this is not like an A to Z of monsters. This is just to give you an idea of how to build your own creatures, which is something that I always like to do, no matter what fantasy game I'm running. I prefer to make my own because, especially in like D&D, you just know that the players, some of them have read the bestiaries through and through, and they instantly recognize. So it's again good to have these sort of bizarre alien-looking creatures that they don't. It enhances the experience of the fight when they don't exactly know what they're facing. There's also in Behind Monsters is called Men and Magicians section, where they go over what different NPCs they might run into. There's a friar, a bandit, a magician, a sage, a peasant, of course, a truly pathetic creature that is. But yeah, that's very good. And appendices here with curses, very nifty idea. And of course languages, which are rolled randomly. What languages you might know. I mean, it is possible that your halfling knows how to talk to ferrets. They have a language. Then there's their own Appendix N, inspirational reading. And some OSR sources noted here, some blogs, websites, forums, publishers that work with Goodman Games, licensed publishers for DCC RPG. Poisons are here as well, and a few words on rules complexity. And there's some nice tables here, like a table of names, which can be useful especially to new game masters. Table of titles that includes things like the gallant, the keeper, the apostle. Yeah. And at the end, we have the portal under the stars, an introductory. This is like that character funnel, and it says here, adventure is designed for 15 to 20 zero-level characters, or 8 to 10 first-level characters. Now that gives you some idea of the lethality of this thing here. And there's another one as well. I think this is also a... Oh no, this is a... for 5th level characters, this is a... The Infernal Crucible of Sezerakan the Mad. Yeah. And some nice art here as well. And then the index with this nice section for the tables, or the different tables in the book that you can find really quickly. Yeah, and that's about it. Now, for someone who is completely new to the hobby, this might seem intimidating, just like that Pathfinder rulebook is, where it's, you know, this will stop a bullet. Look at this thing. But the difference here is that the complexity is far lower. In Pathfinder, you are bombarded with all these modifiers and things that they try to create a balance where you have this point-buy system, and that's sort of recommended in most modules, official modules, and other books even. But yeah, where you sort of build your character, design it in a very specific way so that you succeed in whatever build you are going for. That you have this specific thing that you're good at, and you go for it, and you have to design for that. And for that, you need to know the system, all the feats, the skills, or the little niggly bits of incidental information. And here, it's the opposite. You don't have to know anything, because there's not even that much to know. Just take the dice, start rolling, and yeah, randomly see what you get. It's a great experience, very liberating, even for a game master like me who has been running a lot of different fantasy games over the years, and recently, of course, just Pathfinder, and before that, 4th edition. But yeah, it's incredibly liberating to sort of let go of the reins somewhat, and see where the dice and the story takes you. It's really cool. It's far easier to do in this game than most others that I've found. Well, that's it for my very long review. I know that this is a long one. Sorry about that, but there have been some excellent reviews before on YouTube, and they just disappeared because either the people had to shut down their channel and the videos were gone, or something else bizarre happened. I wanted to give a thorough review to those of you who really want to know more before you put down your 50 euro or 40 bucks or whatever. I would recommend this game to anyone who wants to run a more, well, can't even say old school, because this is not old school. This is not even new school, very just different school. I don't know if it's even a school. Maybe some kind of a weird monastery up in the hills that's haunted by the ghosts of Arneson and Gygax and 1,000 others that came before them. Overall, I'd say if this has piqued your interest, then go at least check out the Goodman Games launch site. I will link it in both parts of this video. So yeah, and if you want to know more, hang around. I'm going to make a different video tomorrow detailing on what kind of house rules I use and how I run the game. So thank you for your patience and for your attention, and have a very nice day. Goodbye.